Morning, everyone. Today we will discuss resistance training programs, chapter 14 on page 375. With this, you will be able to learn about what are resistance training programs, review how and why they should be performed. You'll learn how to design, evaluate, and implement resistance training programs, and how to evaluate your client's needs throughout that program. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. We'll follow along with the chapter 14 PowerPoint slides. So general resistance training principles are listed in that there's a distinction first between resistance exercise and actual resistance training. These terms are used interchangeably, however they are different. So resistance exercise is an actual single training session. Resistance training is your overall program of sessions. And there are several different principles associated with resistance training. The first one is specificity of training. So with this, only the muscles that are trained are going to adapt and change. The SAID principle, it's an acronym, specific adaptations to impose demands. So this says adaptation will be specific to the demands that exercise places on the individual. So let's say a person is training for endurance. They will in turn complete more or higher repetitions, which will allow the body to adapt in terms of endurance. Progressive overload means as the body adapts to a given stimulus, an increase in that stimulus is required for further adaptations or improvements. So we've got to continuously add on, whether it's load, whether it's reps, time, going back to that FIT VP principle. And lastly, prioritization of training. Within a periodization training program, one needs to prioritize their goals. So this is going back to communication with the client, looking at their needs and goals and making sure that you're prioritizing resistance training processes that are going to complement or reach their goals. Variation of training simply means that we need to vary it. So over time, through periodization, you're going to see that sometimes we're focused on hypertrophy, sometimes we're focused on strength, sometimes we're focused on endurance, power, etc. So the body needs that variation in order to adapt over time and continue to progress. Program design processes consist of looking at specific variables that can be controlled to predict training outcomes, which is key to improving program design. Sound decisions must be made based on factual understanding of resistance training, the needs of the sport or activity the client is taking part in, the individual's training responses, and any assessment data. So with this, appropriate changes in the program are required over time, meaning as the trainer, you must be present, you must be focused on the client's needs and the client's fitness level as it changes, the client's performance as it changes, and you must be ready to make decisions to increase or enhance the program as time calls for. Planning and changing the exercise prescription is vital for success. So if, as a trainer, you'll be a really great trainer if you understand that change happens and when we need to change the program, it's dependent on, again, the client's performance and their fitness level. So if you can quantify a client's workout, if you can evaluate their progress, and make sure throughout that time it's safe and effective, you'll lead to optimal physical development of the client. The rate of adaptation is going to be really high in the beginning. So as a deconditioned athlete or client, they're going to see positive changes really quickly. But as the training progresses, those gains or rates of adaptation will slow down. This does not mean that the adaptation stops. It just means that it slows, although it's going to continue to increase at just a slower rate. So with this, as the client progresses, it's really important to find other goals for the program. Those goals must be targeted to prevent the client from losing interest. And just because they might see a lack in rate of progress, finding ways to show them that they're still making progress is going to further motivate them. Focusing on other things like skills. Maybe they're going to accomplish a new skill that they've been wanting to accomplish. And teaching them how to appreciate the process is also going to help them stay motivated and adhere to the program. Lastly, gains are linked to the client's genetic potential. So what might be my potential versus what might be another person's potential who might have higher genes in different areas. Let's say my goal is to be a power lifter, okay, but maybe I have more endurance muscle fibers and I'm not training those fast twitch muscle fibers that are needed for one rep max and being powerful. My gains are going to be very different than one who, focuses more on those fast twitch muscle fibers. And maybe it's genetically blessed with that. Okay, so next is initial assessments. This is where we find all of the information necessary to create a client program. And it starts with a needs analysis, which includes the goals. What are the needs of the client? Do they have any history of chronic disease, any limitations, injuries, etc.? Looking at the time frame, how long do they have and how long might it take to achieve this goal? What areas do we need to target, or muscle groups do we need to target? Are we looking at percentages of 1RM? Okay. And any other health issues that might play a part in their progress or their program. And this time is one for you to really understand underlying motivation behind their why. Why did they show up? Why do they want to take part in resistance training? It's also your time to assess the level of support that they have from their family or friends. And it's a great opportunity for you to discuss with them their prior exercise habits or experience, as well as their sports that they've done in the past and any interests that any additional exercise related interests they have. You can sprinkle a lot of that stuff into the program to keep it more exciting for them as they go along. More with initial assessments. It's time for you to learn about their previous resistance exercise plans. What have they done in the past? What did they enjoy? What were their successes? What were their weaknesses? Let them talk. And then you can conduct a baseline fitness assessment. And this will give you a benchmark of information that you'll use to develop an effective training program. As you move through the actual program, you're going to follow up with assessments. It's important that you keep record of your client's progress. And with this, individualized training logs are a very useful tool. Some companies have online programs like PT on the Net, where you can program for each client, keep their files organized, and keep their records as well in their files for easy reference. Also, you might keep these on paper. Different certifying bodies like in ACSM offer templates that you can use to create resistance training programs. And you might use something as simple as Google Drive, just keeping files on your clients with their workouts. It's going to help you watch progress and reassess. It's also going to be useful, let's say your client travels, but they need to continue working out. You can throw a workout to them that you already had recorded and they've already completed in the past. Follow-up assessments are also important to reassess the client's progress periodically. You always want to reassess, evaluate. Is what I'm doing working? Is it effective? Is it safe? And that also gives you an opportunity to modify the program variables accordingly. Individualization is the most important piece of personal training. What works for one client probably won't work for another, and that's the beauty of working with clients one-on-one. What your workout looked like will not most likely be what your client's workouts look like. So again, a great personal trainer is going to understand the need for individualizing workouts. And these modifications for individualization can be from anatomical characteristics. What does their walking gait look like? What is their posture like? Do they have any imbalances, injuries? What are their needs? Do they need any kind of special equipment? What are their abilities? Are they physically able to complete certain tasks, or do they need modifications or variations? Let's say you program a pull-up. Okay, can the client jump onto a pull-up bar, or do they need a box? If they cannot do pull-ups on their own, are they using bands? If they're not comfortable or coordinated enough to do that, well, maybe you're using a set of rings and doing ring rows. And if that's still not the case, we might move over to machines like the lat pull down or the seated back row. Okay, so looking at abilities and seeing where they stand and what you'll program. And then training adaptations. So adjustments should be focused on optimizing the individual's physiological adaptation. So are they adapting over time? Are you seeing progress? And is it a progression instead of a regression as we move along? Client feedback is going to be something that will help you if you listen, and you will listen to what they say and what they do. A lot of clients won't express verbally how they're feeling or what the exercise feels like, even their soreness levels, even how they're recovering, but you will be able to see it in things like technique, physical signs of pain, maybe their facial expression, maybe the energy level that they bring to the workout. Okay, sometimes you need to ask, soliciting by a health professional, ask them, how are you feeling? How did that movement feel? If you know the person has arthritis in their knees, how did that lunge feel? Do we need to vary that movement, maybe to something bilateral, maybe go to squats instead of lunges? If a forward lunge hurt because you asked, maybe you'll move to a reverse lunge, holding onto a wall, etc. But the only way you can really individualize a program and make it fit for that person is if you get their feedback. With feedback, looking at technique and progression, we want to make sure that we are not regressing. So thorough warm-ups are very important. And after you create the actual workout piece, you might go back and create a thorough warm-up, which includes moves that will mimic those that are prescribed in the actual workout. You'll also prescribe dynamic stretching and any other movement prep that's necessary. Let's say the client is a general population person, very beginner. Your warm-up might be a lot longer. You might have less load in the beginning of the actual workout session, but you'll be able to see, is my warm-up thorough enough so that the individual successfully completes each movement in the workout piece with proper technique, and does it look safe? Okay? You can mitigate a lot of issues by programming a thorough warm-up. So proper progression, especially in beginners and those coming off of injury and disease, just be thorough. You've got to just be present in each client's programming so that you properly list out and execute the exercise session. Too much exercise, too heavy of exercise, and or accentuated eccentric exercise can lead to an excessive amount of muscle tissue damage and breakdown. So we might think excessive soreness. If the client is coming to you telling you that they couldn't move for 2 days, that's an issue on the trainer's end. We want the clients feeling sore, you know, every now and again, but not to the point where they cannot move. Not only is that a risk for injury, but it's also a risk for low adherence. They might not come back. A concern with rhabdo. This may develop from disease, infections, metabolic disorders, or even things like statins that are used to control cholesterol levels, which are unrelated to resistance exercise. However, symptoms come when there's too much volume with exercise, and those include severe aches, weakness, and extremely red, dark brown urine. So we want to lessen the risk of all of this by proper programming. Delayed onset muscle soreness comes maybe 2 days after the training session. Okay, but it's the first sign that an individual has done too much too soon. So if there's a lot of swelling, pain, soreness, those are classical signs of muscle tissue damage. Things that we can do are watch for fatigue. If the person's form is lacking, their technique is deteriorating, stop them. It's okay to stop them, regroup, demonstrate what they're doing, and then demonstrate proper technique. Give them cues, let them grab water, and then get back to it. But explaining the proper muscle groups in the exercise is also going to help so that they can think about what they should be doing. For example, let's say they are doing a body weight squat and they're on rep 10 of 15 and they start to hunch over. Well, we can regroup by saying, remember, the core should be tight. Let's get your chest up. At that point, if you notice reps 11 and 12, the chest is up, great, let them finish. If they cannot hold their chest up and their core is fatigued, stop them, it's okay. Page 380 in your textbook has a Likert type chart to determine muscle soreness. So this goes from 0 to 6. 1 is minor soreness, 3 moderate, 5 extreme. You can use this chart in the similar ways that you use an RPE scale, ratings of perceived exertion. And you can show the client the chart, or you can just explain it. And you can say, for example, all right, client, you're at rep 15 of 20 on push-ups. How do you feel on the scale of 0 to 6? 0, nothing. 6, you're extremely sore from 2 days ago workout. Let them talk to you. And from there, assess and design the workout plan as needed, or redesign it if you need. Another option would be to use this chart before you actually work out. So you meet the client at the front counter of the gym, you assess their muscle soreness at that point. They tell you, well, I feel about a moderate soreness. All right, let's give it a thorough warm up, reassess after the warm up, and probably keep the workout as planned. But let's say they come in with extreme soreness. Well, I might modify the workout, the daily plan for that day. Okay. On the opposite extreme, let's say over the course of maybe 3 or 4 workouts that they've completed with you, they continuously tell you they have minor soreness or none at all. At that point, that might be your cue to up the ante, push it a little bit just to see if they adapt or respond a little bit differently. There are many different many different tools that can be used or modalities, and those are things like exercise equipment. We have dumbbells, we have med balls, we have machines, we have TRX, and the list goes on. And your job as a trainer is to choose what type of modality you're going to use that for each workout. Okay, and your modality choice depends on, well, what are the client's needs? What are their goals? What have they done in the past and what's been successful? And then what are their limitations? Okay. For example, let's say you're working with a client who has very poor balance, and it's their first few sessions. You might consider using resistance machines for a while so they understand muscle groups. They might use bilateral machines, so both limbs working together. You might progress by moving them to unilateral machines, so they have to keep their core engaged and focus on balance but still in a stable position. From there, moving on to body weight, both feet on the floor, might work with a Bosu ball, might work one leg, etc. So I hope you see the progressions that can be made, but focused on the client's limitations. And I'm not going to progress those movements or those modalities until I see the client making progress. Dynamic constant external resistance. This would be accomplished using dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells, weight machines. And the definition, the external resistance does not change during each phase of the lift. So as I am lifting, let's say a bicep curl with dumbbells, the concentric phase is the lift, okay? And I have constant external resistance on that. And as I eccentrically lower the weight, I still have that same dynamic external resistance. Machines versus free weights. Although these are great for anyone in general, mainly we use them with beginners, maybe other populations like older folks or people with disabilities. They are at a comparative disadvantage and compared to free weights. So the 3 reasons why are they don't fit all proportions. So if you're thinking of an overweight or obese individual, the client most likely will not fit into a machine. And if they do, they'll be very uncomfortable. And the last thing we want to do is to put someone in an uncomfortable position while they're training with us. Some of them do not allow full range of motion, and they negate stabilizing muscles, meaning free weights, you're forced to stabilize because the weight, let's say I'm in a shoulder press position, the weight can go anywhere unless I focus on activating and stabilizing the core, activating and stabilizing the muscles in the shoulder girdle. Okay, but the machine guides the client to those positions. One thing to think about, we don't want to overlook the positive aspects of using machines. Some people just want to use machines. They just like using machines, and that's their way of physical activity, then have at it. A few Other things, machines are great for greater independence. There's not as much queuing. They are less intimidating because a client can essentially hop on the machine if they need help. There's always a sticker that shows what the exercise is, what it's called, how to do it, and the muscle groups it's working. They don't allow power training, which might not be an issue. And they do allow body movements that free weights do not. So let's just say the leg press. Okay. You're in a position that you might not be able to accomplish with free weights. Injury prevention exercises are there to enhance strength and function of tissue in order to resist injury, recover faster, reduce the extent of damage if there is damage. Okay. There's a term called prehabilitation, and the aim of prehabilitation is to prevent injury by training susceptible joints and muscles. Often it's used to prevent injury or re-injury. And these movements, all injury prevention exercises, can be used in warm-ups even if the person is well without injury. They can be used during workouts, and they can always be used as accessory movements after a workout in order to prevent injury. I always say if we were just to do the exercises that physical therapists prescribe with our general population clients, we'd probably see way less injury. You'll notice that a lot of athletes do a lot of prehabilitation exercises during their warm-ups and even in their training programs. Acute program variables, there are 5 in which every workout or resistance exercise protocol is derived. So these include the choice of exercise, the order of the exercises, resistance and repetitions used, number of sets for each exercise, and how long the rest period between sets and exercise is going to be. The choices made for the specific combination of acute program variables create an exercise stimulus fingerprint that is specific and unique to that workout protocol. So all of these will look different for all of your individual clients. First one, choice of exercise. We want to think, are we using primary or major muscle groups or assistance, which would be single muscle groups? Are we using multi-joint? Is it requiring coordinated action of 2 or more muscle groups and joints? For example, bench press uses the elbow and shoulder. Or is it single joint? Okay, single joint or single muscle groups are interchangeable. Those are exercises that attempt to isolate particular muscle groups and movement of a single joint. Lastly, bilateral, are you using both limbs or unilateral, one limb? Your choices on these will be related to biomechanical characteristic of the goals targeted for improvement. Order of exercises. Large muscle groups should be worked before small muscle groups. Multi-joint before single joint. You need those smaller muscle groups to help with the bigger muscle group work. Alternating push and pull exercises for total body sessions allow opposite muscle groups, antagonist and agonist, to work back and forth to promote recovery between each. And alternating lower and body exercises for total body sessions as well. Explosive and power type lifts and plyometric exercises before basic strength and single joint. And exercises for prioritizing weak areas should be completed before those of strong. And we think why. If you're thinking of why, you might think, well, we need to depend on performance. We want to have technique We want to move safely. We want to move effectively. We want to move efficiently. So when we think of major muscle group stuff first, power moves first, those are so that we have all the muscle groups that are nice and recovered and full of energy to work first before we move down to what we would say the simpler movements. Most intense to least intense, okay? So particularly when performing several exercises consecutively for the same muscle group. So let's say go back to a pull-up. I might do pull-ups first and then go into bicep curls. I might do bench press first before going into tricep extension. I might do squats first before going into calf raises. Frequency is how many days per week you're training. Tables 14.1 through 14.3 give you recommendations for frequency. And it all depends on the desired outcome, the training status. Where's the client? Are they athletic? What season are they in? Are we working on a full body routine or split? If it's just basic health related, the general recommendation is 2 to 3 days per week using a full body resistance program. If the person is intermediate or advanced, you're going to add days. Duration of rest between sets and exercises are listed. The longer the rest means the work set is more intense usually, or the client is less fit, so they might need more time to recover. Variation of acute program variables. Variation addresses needed change and demands on the neuromuscular system. So you're looking at, is the body adapting? Watch and listen to feedback. Changes in performance, increase. Changes in ability, increase. So you're seeing now I can make variations in those variables. Different loads can result in varying amounts of types of muscle tissue being used. Muscle actions. Muscles can produce force while performing one of the 3 different actions. So you have concentric muscle action, or the actual contraction. You have isometric when there's force but no change in length, let's say a plank, a squat hold. And you have eccentric, which is the muscle is lengthening or resisting the movement. Page 397 shares information on periodization of exercise, and the definition is systematic changes in prescribed volume and intensity during different phases of resistance training programs. So you have different phases here. Hypertrophy is high volume with short rest periods. Strength and power is reduced volume but increased load and rest. Peaking would be low volume but high load and longer rest. And recovery is low volume and low load. All of these are found on page 397 of your textbook. Linear periodization can be found on page 398, table 4.5. And here there's a progressive increase in intensity originally evolved from training for single peak events. So you're progressing in a straight line up to the event. Okay, the volume of the training program decreases gradually in concert with an increase in intensity. Okay, so less volume, higher intensity as you move up. Progression from beginner to advanced. You'll see the level of fitness and resistance training experience may be the most important when designing a resistance training program. Exercises can place a large stress on the body, and certain exercises require a high level of technique to avoid injury. The most important piece at the beginning stages that should be emphasized is technique. Technique, technique, technique. If the technique is off, stop the client, reassess, reevaluate, and reprogram. It might be smart to have single sets in the beginning versus multiple sets. Resistance and volume should be low. Okay? As skill and experience level improves, you'll add in more technical exercises. But in the beginning of a client's journey, keeping it very simple is extremely important. Client interactions, demonstrating proper lifting technique and giving a good visual representation of the lift allows the client to replicate the correct movement. And this can be done in a warm-up. Have them mimic those movements with maybe less range of motion, no load, and practice the exercises. Give them cues, get them into proper positioning, have them practice and replicate correct technique before they actually go lift. Spotting, you want to ask before you touch the client. Resistance training requires physical interaction. You're not just going to stand there and count reps. If the client is working in a challenging manner, the personal trainer is going to need to be there to help out. Okay, it'll be important that you explain spotting and how you will accomplish the lift with the client using spotting. Spotting procedures. First, you need to know proper exercise technique. The client does as well. You need to know proper spotting technique. Verify your strength. Can you lift that weight if the client fails, or get help? You might need side spotters. Know the number of repetitions the client is intending to complete. Be attentive, be present. Stop if incorrect form is performed or broken form is performed. And have an action plan for serious injury. This is on page 403. Large number of exercises can be used in a program. Page 404 through 410 have examples of exercises. All of these examples include a how-to. These would be great to use during your practical sessions and your practical tests. Okay, so page 404 to 410 have many different exercises for you to read about. Take your time. And that concludes chapter 14.